Today we're going to be looking at the Feiyutech MG V2 electronic gimbal. It gives you the solution of getting stabilized shots at a price point that isn't too expensive in comparison to other solutions. Now, electronic gimbals have been around for quite a few years, and they've been a big surge in the uptake in them recently because one, they're not too expensive, and two, the type of shots that you can get with them are pretty impressive. Now, I'm not saying that these are ever going to replace Steadicams or the traditional solutions, because they give a very different type of feel to the motion that you can create with them. But for portability, costs and ease of setup, they definitely have a place in a filmmaker's kit bag. So first, let's see what you actually get in the box with the Feiyutech MG V2. Well, first things first is the box itself. As you can see, it comes in a Pelly style carry case with a dual locking mechanism and breathable valve. And on the inside, it's all nicely foam cut. We've got the top part of the gimbal, the lower part that houses the batteries, of which you get 4 that are charged by this little USB charger. And we've also got the adapter for operating it in a two-handed mode that allows for attaching the 2 crossbars and 2 handles. So, balancing. Let's go backwards and look at how we set this camera up on the gimbal. And it's relatively straightforward once you've already done it once. You simply attach the camera to the sliding base plate and then the base plate to the gimbal, making sure that the side of the camera is flush against the motor arm. Once it's on there, you'll finally want to adjust the camera forwards or backwards so it's close to being level on the axis when left alone. Even though the gimbal will automatically balance itself, it is best to do a rough natural balance before powering up, just to make its life a little easier. Each of the 3 axes has a toolless adjuster, and you'll want to try and align each of the axes so that the center of gravity is aligned with its corresponding motor. Once it's all aligned, we're good to power it on by pressing the 1 button on the handle. What's nice about the MG V2 is that straight out of the box, you have everything you need to rig it up in multiple ways. You can keep it minimal, just have it rigged just for the one-hand operation, or if you need to get lower profile shots, you can simply power it off, flip it upside down, power it back on again, and hey presto, you're now operating in an inverted mode, which allows you to get much closer to the ground. With the adapter, the extension bars and handlebars, you can have it rigged up and operated in a two-handed mode, all making for a really flexible gimbal system. So the MG V2 has a max payload capacity of around 1,600 grams. To put that into a bit of context, this Sony a7S Mark II with this 28mm lens on the front is roughly 900 grams, so there's plenty of room there to spare. Now, I did try this with the 24-70mm 2.8 Sony G Master lens, which I don't know if you've used it before, is quite a big and heavy lens. And although it was still under the maximum payload capacity, it was kind of struggling with that extra weight. So in my brief time using this gimbal, I'd recommend operating it as lightly as you possibly can, just to make its life a bit easier. Now, as soon as you press that button, it is very clear that this thing is now sort of self-balancing itself. And you can see that quite clearly here. Now, one thing I would say though is when I first set this up, I was getting quite a bit of vibrating noise when I was going too far forward or too far backwards, the same side to side. I YouTubed it and I saw a lot of other people who had this problem as well, and it's actually just due to not setting it up properly in the first place. So I would just stress that to overcome that problem, you do need to make sure that the side of the camera is flush against this motor here, and also on the front underneath there's a small thumb screw that needs to be applying pressure to the lens. Once you've done those 2 things, no vibrations, and it is good to go. So once you're powered up, you've basically got a choice of 4 different operating modes, and you can select them by tapping on the 1 single function button on the handle. And when you first power it on, it will be in its default operating mode, which is the pan mode. So as I turn the handle left and right, you can see that the camera there then follows me in a nice smooth fashion. The next one, if you tap it 1 more time, the light will go blue and we're in locked mode, and then the camera will then keep its point of interest locked. No panning, no tilting, hence the name. And then if you want to do the pan and tilt mode, you double tap it, and you can see now as I move it back and forwards, we're also getting the tilt axis in action, so both pan and tilt there. And the final one for you fancy vloggers, if you triple tap it, the camera will flip itself round, and then we've got a very fancy stabilized vlogging setup. If at any point you want to take control of the pan and tilt manually, you do have a 4-way joystick just above the function button where you can override it. So one of the downsides that a lot of people say about when operating a single-handed gimbal is that it can be quite tiring for one arm to take that weight for a prolonged period of time. So the actual gimbal itself weighs about 900 grams. And again, to put that into context to you guys, the A7S with this lens roughly weighs about the same. So in terms of weight, I find it quite comfortable. It's roughly having 2 A7Ss with a 28mm prime lens on the end, and I think it's quite comfortable. Now, I've used this gimbal on a few different shoots, and I really like its portability. I mean, the fact that you can dismantle it, fits into your camera bag. You can carry it around on different shoots even if you're not sure if you're going to use it. And it can be set up within a few minutes once you've already set it the one time, so you know how. And with its battery life, I mean, you get 4 batteries, and that gives you a total of up to 12 hours of runtime, which is, you know, for me, more than enough for a full day of filmmaking. So for more information on video production gear, news, tricks, reviews, head over to wex.co.uk.